enjoy learning about all of the great presentations and work that's been done. The previous presentation was about graduate students, and we're going to go back to talking more about undergrad students today. So to begin, I'm going to introduce my collaborators on this research project. I'm Teresa Burris, and my colleague Emily Mann and I are both librarians in the Research and Instruction Department at University of South Florida's St. Petersburg campus. Susan Montgomery and Rachel Walton are Research and Instruction librarians at Rollins, which is a private liberal arts college in Winter Park near Orlando. And Rachel couldn't be here today, so for this short talk, I'll provide some background and framework for our project. Emily will give an overview of our research, and Susan will discuss some of the unexpected findings, implications for librarians and libraries, as well as next steps. Many of you are familiar with RDM-focused work on data information literacy that's documented in the Carlson and Johnson book. The scope of their work focused on graduate education with an emphasis on research data handling, management, and storage. And in the final chapter of that book, Jake Carlson writes that future research was needed on some of the contextual aspects of data skills. Gobin and Griffin has also assessed and found that no study has considered really undergraduate students, and that best teaching practices around a range of data-related skills is needed. So several presentations at this symposium tackle these very issues, and this is where we're working as well. So for our research, we considered using the RDM focused data information literacy, but ultimately we chose to go with Prado and Marzal's definitions of data literacy that they provided for all types of libraries. So it's very broad. And they define it as the component of information literacy that enables individuals to access, interpret, assess, manage, handle, and ethically use data. So their definition includes the idea that information literacy and data literacy form part of a continuum. And of course, as librarians, this appeals to us. And we found that this approach fit our investigation best because we're exploring data literacy across disciplines and levels throughout the undergraduate curriculum. So starting with that definition in mind, Emily and I actually facilitated a faculty learning community, much like the one that Jennifer talked about earlier. And we tried to adapt and customize Prado and Marzal's competencies, data literacy competencies, specifically for a mid-sized college campus. And we came up with a preliminary set of competencies with some proposed scaffolding, and we published that last fall. And the next step was to test the relevance and applicability of these competencies with faculty at multiple institutions and across disciplines. So this is how our research collaboration began, and I'll turn the stage over to Emily to discuss the nuts and bolts of the project.
Thanks, Teresa. So now on to, hi everyone, I'm Emily Mann. I'm the Student Success Librarian at USF St. Petersburg campus. So now on to the research that we did. After a really lengthy IRB process, because we were using 2 universities and having to change our methods a little bit because of COVID-19, we did a series of structured interviews for faculty across both our institutions. Our institutions are Rollins College and the University of South Florida St. Petersburg campus. Both of these are relatively small campuses that really focus on undergraduates. We have some graduate programs, but not too many. Our research, we reached out to multiple faculty, but we really only mostly heard back from faculty that knew us personally from either our liaison work or from some of the faculty learning community things that we had done. And so we mostly spoke with faculty in the social sciences, the natural sciences, or applied disciplines such as education or business. We didn't get any interviews with faculty from the humanities, and that is something that we hope to address later on. The research questions that we were trying to answer is what data literacy competencies should undergraduate students have? What are the faculty needs regarding these data literacy competencies? And how can librarians and the library partner to help with that? So here you can see some of the competencies that we asked the faculty about relating to undergraduate students. We read out our list of competencies and asked if they felt like these were skills that the undergraduate students should possess by the end of their undergraduate degrees. You can see here the percentage of people that agreed that these were competencies that undergraduate students needed. The largest ones being interpret and critically evaluate data, recognize how data is integrated into daily life, communicate data with visualizations, find, select, access, and create data sets. Then later on, some of the other competencies that we read out to them, they felt like were more appropriate for either upper level students or students in graduate school. While we were doing this, we were actually surprised with some of the responses, and this helped change our data literacy competencies for undergraduates. Originally, we had the competencies scaffolded with levels like lower level, upper level, and graduate. But from talking with our faculty, we realized that the scaffolding really needed to be defined by the discipline. If you look here, you can see that some things that are lower level skills for natural sciences are actually upper level skills for social sciences, and vice versa. So for example, you can see that ethically collecting, using, and citing data is something that the natural sciences faculty felt was more upper level, undergraduate research level, whereas social sciences thought that it should begin at all levels and then increasingly get more complex. On the other hand, things like finding data sets was more introductory for natural sciences, where social sciences felt it was more upper level. In our interviews that we did with our faculty, we got some interesting quotes. So the faculty perspectives are here. While interviews with the faculty in natural sciences and social sciences reflected agreement about the importance of data literacy in undergraduate learning, close reading of the individual transcripts revealed nuanced disciplinary differences in the way the competencies were scaffolded from general education to upper level undergraduate research and beyond. For example, as mentioned on the previous slide, the way the faculty used data sets in the classroom may differ depending upon disciplinary context. These quotes reflect that difference. Faculty in natural science disciplines prioritize the collection of original data and testing hypothesis as a component of introductory courses and labs, while faculty in social science disciplines tended to reserve the collection of original data to senior or capstone level classes. We saw some interesting and unexpected trends during this investigation. Many of our interviewees specifically noted the value of students understanding both qualitative and quantitative data types. However, some faculty comments suggested that students do not necessarily see both types of data as equally useful, at least at first, and may not have been exposed to qualitative data as a concept in previous learning contexts. And now, to talk a little bit more about our results, I'm going to hand it over to Susan.
Great, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Susan Montgomery, and I'm affiliated with at Rollins College in Winter Park, Florida. So I'm here to talk a little bit about what we were surprised about in our research. We realized that many faculty emphasized in their interviews the importance of teaching data literacy beyond their discipline, outside their academic context. So there were repeated comments about the importance of data literacy as an essential skill in being an informed citizen. That the knowledge that they learned in this skill set was necessary and important for their post-college life and success. And that several faculty maintained that these data skills made them more competitive outside college when seeking employment. Next slide, please. So where do librarians fit in this whole gamut of data literacy? We see the role of librarians in data literacy as overlapping with our role in information literacy. As you can see on the slide, some of the things that we do with students in finding information also apply in data literacy, evaluating data and their sources, synthesizing the data in their work, and citing data effectively in their work. These overlap with the expertise that we have with information literacy quite nicely. with faculty, we see that we can partner with our faculty colleagues in professional development activities, workshops, connecting faculty in ways that they may not know about data literacy, and also incorporating ways of teaching data ethics and data literacy instruction. Furthermore, we found for the library as a campus department that the library can play an active role in data literacy. We feel that libraries can adopt the perspective that data literacy is a part of information literacy, and with the providing access to like we do for information literacy collections of data of information, we could provide access to data sets first to contribute to student learning and faculty research. We can also think about ways that we can create instructional opportunities for students, and that can come in various ways of boot camps, certificates, workshops, like we do traditionally with information literacy. With respect to our faculty colleagues, the library can connect faculty with one another across disciplines and overall collaborate them on their research. So like Emily said, we do have some ideas for next steps. Originally, we had a plan to do a focus group with these faculty colleagues that did not work out because of COVID and other limitations in time. But we do think that we could think about doing that as next steps. Similarly, we were unable to connect with faculty in humanities disciplines, so we would like to get their perspectives on what data literacy means to them in those fields. We've talked about doing a syllabi analysis to look and investigate how exactly our faculty colleagues are teaching these skills in their classes. And our wonderful co-authors have this amazing resource on data literacy, and we are thinking of ways to contribute that to that data literacy toolkit to help others learn about these skills and incorporate them into their work. So this is us. Like Teresa said at the beginning, Rachel could not be here, but she was very important to our research, and our contact information is on this slide as well. And no library presentation is complete without citations. So that first link, that first citation is an upcoming chapter that will be coming up in next year that all this research is presented, and along with what we consulted in our research. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. So everyone can feel free to put their questions in the Q&A. I don't see any yet. Okay, there's one. How did you come up with the questions for your interviewees? How did you analyze them?
I'll start. So we based it on some structured interviews that some former librarians at our library had done, looking at data literacy support mainly for faculty. And we looked at what we wanted to find out about, and that's how we came up with our questions. I believe they are included in our chapter. And we analyzed them. We came up with a couple of themes and coded for those themes within. And then we also just read through our different texts and thought about what kind of things they were bringing up. I'll let Teresa or Susan jump in if they have anything they want to add to that.
We basically were following, the previous had done some things basically about how the library needed to help with data management, and that what they found was that there was more interest from faculty in getting help with their teaching as opposed to their research, because a lot of our faculty, because we are a branch campus of an R1 institution, Most of our faculty who have big research collaborations are partnering with people who do have bigger resources. And so their need for the library to step in on about data management and storage and curation was less, but they do have lots of interest and need in, just like information literacy, disciplinary faculty are learning from their own disciplines as opposed to articulating this kind of transferable skill. And so the conversations were really, really useful to us.
Okay, I'll go on to the next question, which is a quick follow-up from the first question asker. How long were the interviews?
The interviews were around 30 minutes, and we did do them all virtually because they were scheduled for March and April. So they stretched out through June and were virtual. And all of the faculty were really great about taking the time, and they were really, really enthusiastic. And in fact, Susan mentioned about research collaboration being a potential outcome. We talked to 2 or 3 different faculty who broached separately the idea of longitudinal studies to look at data literacy as students progress through their undergraduate years. So that was useful.
Okay, next question. The observation about science versus social science use of data, parentheses, collection versus analysis, was very interesting. Do you have ideas about how to use that information for instruction?
So I work with the political science department at Rollins, and with that, I know that they are interested in students learning more about where they can find data sets for their work, right? Not creating it so much, but where are the sources for information, for data content that they can use in their research, the student research. So I have started using that as kind of a way to get in with some of the upper level political science courses where they're expected to do a little bit more in-depth research projects. And so I created some LibGuides and expanded that and shared that with my faculty colleagues in political science, because that, for me, in my role, that was very illuminating in how I can help my faculty in that regard and give guidance to students on how to use these data sets effectively.
I would also say I think it's going to affect how we continue to do this research. We are hoping to do the focus groups, and I think we might want to look more dividing by discipline. I also think it's really helpful for liaison librarians who might be a little bit nervous about dipping their toes into data literacy to see, okay, well, within this subject area, this is really more of a beginning area for people.
So I'll just mention also that we did put our LibGuide in the chat, and that, as it stands now, that reflects more the outcomes of our faculty learning community from the previous research. And so our group now, the 4 of us are going to work to include these most current findings and the different kinds of nuances. And I do also want to make a caveat that we're using a very gross generalization of science versus social sciences. It's way more nuanced than that. But it did seem like a pattern to us. And as far as applying it for instruction, I just think that it's useful to kind of, when you're talking to different disciplinary faculty, where liaison areas that what their needs are going to be at that level. So if I'm offering instruction at a higher level in the sciences, what they might need is more the contextualizing of data as opposed to more of the mechanics of data collection and methods for experimental design, because that's what they kind of cover in labs in introductory science courses.
Okay, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much for your presentation.